to Simon. We're going to bring 5 esteemed panellists into the discussion now. I've got Sarah Duignan from STR Global in London. She has been looking at all the data about lead-in times for occupancy, and we will be looking at things like yields and what should be done with room rates, how the hotel world has been behaving. I've got Keogh from their Touristik in Germany. Most of people looking in will be very familiar with their work in Germany. He's also responsible for bringing something like 50,000 tourists from all across Europe into Ireland. He was looking at the growth rate for 2020 when he was sitting down in January of 6 or 7%. I've got Elizabeth Crabhill from New York, CIE Tours International, major player inbound. They were looking at growth of 8% in 2020. I've got Stephen Kavanagh, who chaired the workstream on international access. Aviation is what he does. His father was in the fire department at Dublin Airport, so from a very young age, Stephen, there was no doubt aviation was where he was going, and he went to the top. He became CEO of Aer Lingus. And we have Niall Gibbons that we met earlier. I'm going to go straight into Sarah. You're looking at what the bookings, what the occupancy for months and months and months ahead is looking like. What I'm reading is that big city tourism is suffering disproportionately, and the big demand drivers, 2021 for instance, would have been the biannual England rugby match which fills Dublin's hotels. Those big demand drivers are gone from the cities, and the countryside, the rural areas, not doing as badly. What are you seeing, and what, to go back to the core question, what do you think needs to happen for 2021 to happen for Irish tourism?
Thanks, Eoghan. Good morning, everybody. Delighted to be here this morning. I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. I think your summary is pretty accurate in terms of the big gateway cities are certainly the locations that have struggled, certainly into the early part of the kind of recovery and coming out of lockdowns. We have seen that shift somewhat for Dublin. We're seeing about 35% of rooms, certainly over the next week or two, are sold, or as we call it, business on the books. Dates into the future, like New Year's Eve, about 35% so far on the books for city centre, a little bit less maybe in surroundings and airport. But it is still really the more regional markets, so markets outside of Dublin, that we're seeing progress a little bit faster. If you compare Cork is about 50% for this coming weekend, looking at close to kind of 60% for New Year's Eve. And then you mentioned the rugby. I'm a big rugby fan. Fly the flag for Ireland quite frequently through Six Nations. Interesting, it feels very, very close again, given all the delays with the last few games. And we're already seeing kind of high teens on the books for city centre Dublin as well. So still, though, the same pattern. The pattern used to be that the regions performed behind Dublin and maybe weren't as strong. And I'm seeing that pattern shift somewhat, especially when you look at the demand drivers and the greater ability to social distance. And I'm sure some of my esteemed colleagues and panellists will talk more about what needs to happen: vaccine, airlift, generally speaking, consumer confidence. I think Simon touched on that as well. We see the pattern as being domestic leisure returning first, corporate next, international hopefully not too far behind. I'm sure Elizabeth will have a much better view on that, and then group. And that's kind of the sequence that we see. And that's not just for Dublin, that's for several, especially key European locations. And Sarah,
how are other European cities? Is 15-16% for Dublin? That sounds quite high with what some of the figures we saw in October. Is that ahead of where London, Paris, Rome? And the other thing I want to get a handle from you is, for instance, the Spanish, Italian hotels, they will take a little bit longer to get lifted. Are we going to lift a little bit earlier?
Yeah, certainly just to clarify on the Dublin piece, though, and that kind of 35-36% is just the next couple of weeks. We expect the capital to kind of close somewhere around the 30% for the whole year. It's a similar read when you look at the Barcelonas, the Madrids, the Amsterdams, the Edinburghs, maybe even a little bit less in places like Rome and Madrid. Edinburgh is often compared to Dublin as a short haul destination. And they're sitting around the 30%. They definitely take longer for the Italies of this world. Any of the locations in Italy, they're more reliant on seasonality, and they're certainly entering into a new lockdown now over the entire Christmas and New Year period as well. So they're more in the kind of early 20s, maybe mid 20s at an absolute push, and will take longer. Expecting kind of Q2, and maybe even into Q3 of next year before we really start to see the recovery in those locations.
I want to bring in Kevin Keogh. Numbers are down. What people would like to know across Europe is how long they will stay down. One of the points that I think you have made is that transparency is one of the really important factors to getting international travel into Ireland moving again.
I think those some of the points that Simon just said that are very valid about the customers are going to be wary about where to go and can they go, but you're going to have a huge amount of information for the customers. They'll have to know exactly can I go to the destination. It's not only about what countries are opening, it's also the fact if you're actually allowed to leave Germany. So it's a kind of an out-in kind of scenario. We've had that in Germany as well. Some of the destinations have opened up, but the German government said you're not going there because we won't let you out. If you do go there, you're going to go into 14 days quarantine. So there are things that are going to be a problem. There are other things that are not going to be a problem. I mean, we offer our customers PCR testing. In Germany, we don't have customers that are waiting for repayments of holidays they made in March, April, May. That's not a problem. The only problem we have in that sector is airlines that haven't paid back a lot of airlines that haven't paid back the customer payments on their flights during the year, but normal travel, tourism travel or tour operator travel, that hasn't happened. And as Simon said there as well, I'd like to commend and thank Tourism Ireland for the invitation today and compliment you on the work you've been doing, because we've had a meeting yesterday with your people here in Frankfurt and also connected up to Dublin. And your initiatives, your ideas, and a lot of the stuff I've seen here today, you're very well prepared. And that's part of the deal. If we want to get things moving again, we have to have transparency. We have to tell the customer exactly what's going to happen. One thing that we won't have, that Simon mentioned there, is in Germany, about 2 years ago, the European Package Travel Directive was very intensely integrated into the travel agencies and the tour operators in Germany. So informing the customer about pre-travel information, we don't see a problem there where the customer will actually know exactly what's happening in the destination. And we've actually built up an information portal for the customers to inform them and also for the travel agents. So I don't think we're going to have a problem in the information scenario, but we need to inform the customers, when can I go to which destination and what do I need? And I think this information is available and we're offering to our customers on a daily basis.
And Elizabeth, the escorted tour business, is it going to look a little bit different in the post-COVID world? Of course, escorted tours that you do so successfully would not exist without the strength of product on the ground. Are there things you would be looking to the product providers to help restart tourism, to make 2021 happen for Irish tourism?
Yes. Oh, well, thank you for having us here. We're always trying to stay in line with our Tourism Ireland research and trends. And I think what we are seeing is that while every tour operator in the United States that services tours into Ireland, we all are banding together and trying to anticipate changes in what the post-pandemic traveler is going to want for the product. But I think what we're seeing, we also have indicators of real bookings that are happening. We've created a whole lot of new independent products. There is an anticipation that perhaps people might not want to travel in groups of large groups, and they may only want to go with very small numbers of people or private bubbles. And those kind of trends are very much going to be part of the transition. However, we actually have a very large book of business that is giving us indicators as to where people really might be leading. And we were able to move 73% of our 2020 business actually rebooked for 2021. So that was very positive. Number one, that people do have hope that the tour business will be ready and it will be the right product for them in 2021. But of that, we've got 60% of those actually went on specific dates, many of them for the second half of the year. So I think that's an indicator there. But one of the questions we get is, are all of these independent products that we designed over 2020 and put into our catalog for 2021, we anticipated that those would be the first to fly off the shelves. It's actually not proving to be the case. We already have 26% of all of our departures are subscribed at the large coach level. They have enough people on them that they're going to be full coaches. That is unusual. That is not what we expected. It's still to be determined because we have a lot of people who took future travel credits and haven't selected their dates or their departures yet. But the second thing we have is that within our groups business of people who are booking on their private group together, 44% of those are on a large coach level. So it isn't proving to be the case, but we do still believe that those independent products will be very important for the people who are on the cusp, who are not quite sure when they want to leave yet, but the only way that they would feel safe booking is to have an independent product, and they are there and they're available and they're going to be very good products. The other thing I'd like to add is that the one thing we really need is we need the businesses in Ireland, all of those very valued tourism businesses, we need them open, we need them healthy, and we need them operating. So anything to help keep those businesses in survival mode, but also in rebuilding mode for 2021, we are fully in support of, and we want to make sure that there are as many supports as possible, because we believe there's going to be a very fast opening. When Americans do cross that line and say, I'm ready to go, it's going to be fast. And we believe there will be a huge onslaught of travel demand because people have been cooped up for a long time.
I'm Stephen Kavanagh. All that depends on access. We have, Simon outlined the fact we have two advantages, two of Europe's soundest airlines, because a lot of airlines are under pressure coming out of this crisis. Are we in danger of squandering that? And how do you see the shape of the aviation connectivity recovery, getting those large numbers of flights in and on and off the island once more? I know that both Ryanair and Aer Lingus have very ambitious schedules loaded for 2021. Will it be short haul first and long haul second?
Well, first let me say I would support Simon's thesis that actually having those two airlines based in Ireland provides us with a unique opportunity. But that's not to underestimate the size and scale of the crisis in the airline industry, even for the most resilient of businesses. I mean, globally, airlines are looking at losses of $118 billion, $66 lost for every passenger flown. And the best estimate from IATA is that loss will reduce to $20 per passenger flown in 2021. So the industry is in crisis. The European industry particularly is in crisis because there's been a fragmented policy approach to reopening markets. And Ireland acutely, in terms of capacity reduction, has been at the wrong end of that dynamic. When we reported recommendations from the Taskforce, both from the Tourism Taskforce and the Aviation Recovery Taskforce, we were focused on three elements which I think are as relevant today as they were then. For airlines, the criticality of cash, so any incentive or subsidy that can reduce cash operating costs. The issue of confidence in predictability that borders will remain open, that quarantine procedures won't be reimposed. Confidence for the consumer to have an ability to plan. And lastly, cost. And those three elements, I think, are well catered for in the recommendations, which are yet to be implemented. And I think the last of cost will be of critical import going forward, because it will take some time for capacity to return to 2019 levels, but I would predict that the capacity that does return will be structurally different. We're going to see the earlier return of low-cost carriers, and we're going to see them gaining greater share on short-haul domestic markets in coming years. And we all know what's relevant to LCCs. And I think we have to pivot in terms of the incentive and the subsidy and the encouragement, recognising the importance not just of cash in the short term, but of sustainable cost reduction in the long term. And I think if we do that and we're proactive, I think we have every chance of encouraging the two carriers that are most committed to business on the island, with leadership teams that are committed to the island, to follow with capacity.
Now, you say we've every opportunity, but if this tap is turned off, everything else everybody does is of no relevance whatsoever. We need that access. Does something major have to happen? Does some signalling have to happen to let the aviation world know we're open for business?
The confidence issue will take some time, and the last 9 months shows how critical getting it right will be. But airlines plan with significant lead times, and decisions about 2021 summer are already being made today. To influence those decisions, the levels of cost reduction that airlines can rely upon, primarily in airport charges or any charges imposed by the state, and a level of support and incentive on a route-specific level need to be rolled out now in order to influence decisions. Because as well as airlines competing for consumers come the new year, competing economies, competing states are going to be actively canvassing airlines and offering support to pull capacity away from the island of Ireland.
We're getting lots of questions coming in. I'm going to try, we won't have time to get to them all. I'm going to try and group them together, but a lot of them are questions about when do we start marketing again? When do we open our North America campaign? This is about, Niall Gibbons, managing expectations, isn't it? That, let's cut to the chase here. We could be in a situation where 2021 could be written off as much as 2020 was, with so many of our major markets bouncing in and out of local lockdowns and all that uncertainty. When do you think we'll get a shape of what 2021 will look like from the vast, many-headed animal that Irish tourism has become?
Well, I think what we've tried to do today is put out what a framework for recovery looks like, and we've tried to chart out, next year. And, we will have, and we haven't stopped marketing, by the way, we have been marketing, but in terms of paid marketing, getting out there with the big spend, we are planning around St. Patrick's Day at the moment with that green button campaign. All the websites have been redeveloped, so we're in good shape and ready to go. But agility and flexibility will be the hallmarks of next year. Just as this year, if you go back to when the pandemic happened around March, we all thought we'd be back in business in May and June, and infection rates have got very low and things were looking good for the summer, and our main markets went pear-shaped in Great Britain and the United States particularly. So low infection levels are essential. A vaccine gives the best hope for recovery right now. I think international restoration of travel in Q2 is realistic, but things could change, and I think we just have to keep an eye on it, and we'll keep communication with the industry as to how things are going. The collaboration has been second to none. So the way we're calling it today is Q1 for our campaigns, Q2 for travel, to save the summer season, so to speak, but I think it's watch this space.
And going back to Sarah now, revenue managers will be looking into this. They'll saying, what do we do? Do we hold our nerve on rates? Will price drive a recovery? That's clearly going to happen on the aviation side. Does it need to happen on the hotel side? And also, I think aviation has been criticised very heavily on its refunds policy. Hotels had a very, very clean record, clear record on refunds. Has that come under pressure? Because liquidity is going to be the big word for the first few months anyway in the Irish hotel sector.
I think along with hotel demand, that goes hand in hand. As Simon referenced, over 80%, I think Niall referenced as well, over 80% of all tourists that come into Ireland come in by plane. I'm probably part of the 18 to 20% that ordinarily comes in by ferry. I think our hotels have done an exceptional job with their cancellation policies and how all that's played out, or being able to book into the future if you have deposits paid in some instances. I think Elizabeth referenced that for CIE as well with the voucher kind of system. I think that's something that should remain. I think that will help to boost confidence. To know that you're not going to be in the situation that, again, that Kevin referenced, where some of the refunds haven't been processed for airlines. I myself had 4 or 5 different sets of airfares that took significant periods of time to refund as well. I think Ireland is in a really good position. when you look at, Brexit aside, you won't talk about the B words, but a really good position with all the different regional offerings. Dublin has started to pick back up, albeit at, kind of in or around the 30% over the next few weeks. There is some confidence into the future. We've started seeing kind of mid-teens into June, July, August, maybe even as early as May, mid-teen kind of demand on the books across the island, across the island of Ireland. Belfast also. We track a lot of information for Northern Ireland as well. So it all goes hand in hand.
Translate into yields, Sarah, do you think? Should we be playing with the price as an incentive in that?
Yeah, we certainly can't make any pricing recommendations on. We're definitely a publicly traded company. I can tell you that yields did not take as big a hit as occupancy did.
Okay.
To give you some numbers on that, occupancy for Dublin is down about 70% through year end. Yields, or average rate as we call it, is down about 28%. And that equates to just over €100. In the regions, or Ireland regions, let's just say everything outside of Dublin, that's at about 72%, 39% occupancy, so down about 68%, and yields down roughly kind of 22%, a little bit less than what we saw in Dublin. So it really has been, it's about getting demand back into the market.
That pretty much sends a clear message out there. And coming into Cavan as well, you have one of your mantras through this is it's no time to start planning when the recovery starts. Plan in advance of the recovery. Do you want to set out a sort of a little few guidelines and a few priorities for people in the downtime, which is now, that what plans should we be making to make sure that we're at the front of the queue for market share when tourism and when travel happens again?
It's basically what we discussed yesterday with Tourism Ireland and a couple of weeks ago as well, because as like Niall said, we've been in discussions over the last couple of months. We're not just starting now. And we've been discussing when's the best time to do what. And you're going to see it's going to go into different phases. And I don't think anybody really thinks that on the 1st of April next year, all the people that are vulnerable are going to be vaccinated by then. If we're in the European Union that still hasn't been able to organise that the vaccines even start. So I think, to be realistic, we'll have to build it up in phases. And I think, the first phase is going to be, the start of the year, plan exactly what you're going to do. And that's what Niall was just saying there. We're going to augment our planning as well. We're going to have a big bang on the 17th of March and kick it off there as well from the German, Austrian and Swiss markets as well. And I think you have to look at different phases. And in the phases, and one of the major things we're going to have where we'll need the help of the industry is the customers are not going to accept the old cancellation fee agreements. The customers are going to expect if something happens again, I can cancel without any penalty up to 14 days before I actually travel. And I think that's one of the major factors. And I think one of the major factors for Ireland as a destination, and also on a government level, the tourism industry is one of the industries that can actually recover very, very quickly if the homework is done and if we get the hygiene concept set up. So I think from a government level, they'll have to determine how important is the industry for us and what kind of investment we want to put in there. Because I think the tourism industry is one of the industries that can actually give a huge boost to the economy if it works, if we can get it to recover very, very quickly. And by doing that, I can anybody we're talking to, the Canary Islands, any island we talk to that do this business with us and short haul, long haul, it's an island. If you can't get the people on the island, and the holiday is not going to happen in 80% of the cases. So my recommendation would be, support the whole industry, but you have to support the airlines. And an airline like, an airline like Aer Lingus, it's not an alternative for us to shift our business to low cost. That's not our type of customer. It's not the type of business we do in general with the customers we're sending over from Germany, Austria, Switzerland. So we need support of basically the traditional, reliable airlines like in Aer Lingus. And I said, it's a no-brainer. If you can't get people on the island, the holiday is not going to happen. But I mean, my appeal to the Irish government would be to take it very, very serious about recovering the tourism industry, set up a phased plan like Niall just said there. And they're in contact with everybody that's involved in the industry internationally. And And it's very speed and information are very important. And I think you're right at the forefront there. This is not just because we're here talking to Tourism Ireland today or talking to the Irish industry. They're doing a very good job. You're right on the ball. And Tourism Ireland is the first organisation that came up to us and asked us about restart. We're talking to 4 or 5 different other destinations at the moment. But as I said, you're way ahead of the posse, and I can only compliment you on the way you're addressing the situation for people in Frankfurt, in Vienna, and also in Dublin.
And Elizabeth, we're down to our very last minute. The time has flown. Magic wand, what on the product side, and a lot of product people will be looking in today, should we be doing post-COVID that we weren't doing pre-COVID to keep the customers satisfied?
Well, gosh, I wish I had a magic wand. I would have changed a lot of this before. But I think the 2 pieces that we're all focused on is, number one, it is creating that sense of space and independence, and that may be in the type of experiences that people are having, maybe not just limited to cities, but also getting out, which is clearly in Ireland is a great option. But also the safety protocols. I don't think that there is no one-upmanship in safety protocols. That has to be consistent across all of us in the industry. And I think the customer really wants to see that the protocols are almost universal and respected protocols for safety, regardless of destination. But I do think that's one thing Ireland has a very strong leg up in, which is a trust in the destination having been responsible in handling of the virus. That I think that reputation has risen in the United States, which is very strong for our market. But on the product side, it is creating those experiences that make people feel even more welcome than ever, because they could be in smaller groups, they could be trying to get out of cities, but regardless of where they're going, they have been pent up and locked down for a very long time, and they want to be welcomed with open arms. So there has to be a high level of trust from both the traveler coming in to the destination, that the destination is open, welcoming, and safe. But there also has to be trust that the local residents and the people in tourism businesses trust that the visitors coming in are safe and can be trusted. So I think both any work and all schemes that support travel-related testing, anything about health and safety protocols while on tour to keep people confident, over time, these last few months, and I think going into the next, 2, 3, 6 months, people will become used to those, and there will become a norm across the industry that we all need to share it and consistently deliver that safety experience. But what has to continue to be unique, we want consistency and safety, but we want uniqueness in the actual experience on the ground. And that Irish welcome has got to come back in full force and make sure that everybody is as happy as they could be that they selected Ireland for their first destination coming out of lockdown.
Thank you very much to my 5 panellists. I've learned a lot. I hope people looking in have learned a lot as well. I think the Ulster Scots equivalent is very simple. Thanks. I'm going to hand over now to Niall Gibbons to bring our great session to a close.